My name is Paul Gira, a graduate student nurse at Texas A&M Corpus Christi School of Nursing, the Family Nurse Practitioner Department. Thank you for taking the time to review my integrative systematic review of literature on the effectiveness of e-cigarettes. The background of this review was based on the use of e-cigarettes being used and advertised as means of a smoking cessation tool. 3.7% of USA adults spend about $1.5 billion on e-cigarettes related products in the last 5 years. There's a lot of inconsistency across the board on the manufacturing, the sales, and the e-cigarettes use with no federal regulations. There is also a high rise from 3.3% to 6.2% on the use of e-cigarettes between the years of 2010 and 2012, especially in the USA. There is also no clinical practice guidelines or recommendations that healthcare providers should be using. There is a lack of long-term studies also on e-cigarettes use, effectiveness, effects, and consequences. So the current practice, as of August 2016, the FDA oversight on e-cigarettes was limited only to the sale and the labeling of e-cigarettes. The medical e-cigarettes recommendation on use, legality, strength, tapering off, or length of use is not really existent. The only recommended smoking cessation by the Federal Drug Administration is the 5 years with professional counselor, which is ask the status of smoking, advised on quitting, assess the willingness to quit, assist in quitting using approved NRTs and counseling, as well as arranging the follow-up. There is a concern of abuse, but no prohibition so far from the federal government. The e-cigarettes recommendation for now is of a personal judgment call by the healthcare provider. The research question is, in adult smokers interested in smoking cessation, is the e-cigarette use more effective at improving smoking cessation than self-directed means? The design of this literature review on e-cigarettes was conducted to evaluate the e-cigarettes' effectiveness. The description of such terms used to locate the studies, the terms were e-cigarettes, electronic cigarettes, smoking cessation, and tobacco cessation. Databases used were Cochrane, CINAHL, Web of Science, and PubMed databases. The inclusion criteria was that the initial research of studies on e-cigarettes was a primary source, published or translated in English language. The publications were supposed to have at least about 5 years between 2012 and 2017 and meet the quality appraisal rating of at least 3.0 using the quality appraisal checklist. The exclusion criteria was that the articles were not written in English, failed to meet 3.0 of the minimum criterion for quality appraisal, focus on other NRT products without statistical data on e-cigarettes, or have no relevance to e-cigarettes as a smoking cessation tool. The quality appraisal tool used was the quality appraisal tool review checklist done by Met and Lee and Cook. As far as the data extraction was done, about 181 articles were really in regards to the e-cigarette use. The records pulled out were about 181. Out of them, a streamline of identification, we removed the duplicates, and I was able to have also 12 other sources that were taken from other databases. 130 were written in English, and about 21 met the eligibility criterion. The initial consideration was about 12, and finally 9 were considered. The randomized controlled trials were 3, the cross-sectional and the longitudinal studies were 4, and prospective cohort studies were 2. It is of a note to say that for the sake of space on this poster, only 6 were presented, which presented a much stronger evidence compared to the rest. The results on this review, out of these 9, we considered 6, and 2 of the supported the PICO, 2 do not support the PICO, and 2 are inconclusive in their conclusions. The compared results do not, in general, approve or disapprove the effectiveness of e-cigarettes as a smoking cessation tool. Studies, among these studies, 2 studies that supported the e-cigarettes use in smoking cessation compared to other nicotine replacement therapy products and no other help group, there were only 2 that only supported the e-cigarette use. 2 of the studies, they were inconclusive in their findings and showed much better rigor in their testing and the use of e-cigarettes as a smoking cessation tool. 2 studies also that did not support the PICO, they said that the e-cigarettes used in smoking cessation were carried on for a longer period of time, up to 1 year. However, all the studies reviewed agreed that there is lack of conclusive evidence to support the use of e-cigarettes in smoking cessation without standardization and regulatory oversight, given the variety in device manufacturing and chemical component of e-cigarettes. All the studies concur that the long-term side effects of e-cigarettes use remain unknown, particularly with the diversity of types of e-cigarettes, lack of federal oversight and control to allow standardization and research opportunities. Some of the studies had severe biases due to involvement of tobacco industry, attrition, and recall bias, as well as low response rate, hence a reduced confidence in their reliability. In the absence of convincing and irrefutable evidence, recommendations will be to further investigate the effectiveness of e-cigarettes in smoking cessation with well-designed randomized controlled trials on standardized e-cigarettes. E-cigarettes are not recommended by FDA so far as a smoking cessation tool. Only the 5A's method remaining the use for federally funded programs for smoking cessation. In conclusion, the evidence available on e-cigarettes use as smoking cessation tool has mixed results and considerable limitations to support or disapprove its effectiveness. More studies are needed with better design. However, there is need on manufacturing standardization and regulatory oversight, without which randomized controlled trials may not be able to be carried out with solid and unquestionable evidence.